Hi, everybody. Welcome back to What We're Watching, a podcast to keep your eye on. And you've come to us at a very camouflaged time in our lives. We had no intentions on planning to match today, but here we are. We both have our little drinks today, so we can prepare ourselves because, boy, do we have an awesome episode for you guys. Now, I know that not everybody is a big fan of horror movies and all things scary. But personally, in the Potter household, if there was one thing we grew up on, it was horror movies. And what's crazy is I don't really feel like mom and dad are necessarily like huge horror movie people.
No,
But for some reason, it was like we always watched horror movies. And maybe it was like Delaney was a
I
big
think it
horror
was
movie
Lainey.
person.
Yeah.
He showed us a lot of them, but now it unfortunately puts my horror tolerance, my like scare tolerance very high, and it takes a lot to scare me.
I feel like I don't know. I haven't found a movie like scary movie yet that has scared me. I just find them very like unsettling,
Right. I
which
want
I like. I
I'm
like
in the
that
mood for
feeling.
a movie though that I'm like sleeping with the lights on, like checking behind my back. And I feel like the last movie that really did that for me, which I remember showing Cam this movie, was Strangers. Like to me that movie will
Oh.
always make me feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there's a lot of movies nowadays that, like, if they just make you feel stressed out and uncomfortable and anxious, like, that's the type of movie that I'm intrigued by when it comes to like a horror movie. But, what we're going to talk about today is partially this new genre of horror that we're starting to see kind of a trend and it's being named. And then also just kind of how history uses horror as like the horror genre is used to kind of mirror history and like what's going on throughout like
Mm-hmm.
it's the generations of horror films that we see and
Hmm.
how this new genre kind of plays into that like idea and that theory. So, without further ado, let's get into it because we got a lot to talk about. So, this all started basically because of Obsession. And for those that haven't seen Obsession, Obsession is a horror movie that came out at the end of May and it broke records in the box office. Like
Hmm.
every single week, they keep it in theaters longer and longer because it's like week one, it made a bunch of money. Week two, it made even more money than the first week. Week three, I think it made more than both the first and second week combined. It's absolutely crazy. And something that we both love, it has actors in it that aren't super popular, which
Hmm.
is so awesome to see. So,
Hmm.
Ava, I want to kind of we'll talk about Obsession in like its entirety, and we won't like spoil everything because I really want people to see it. And there's some crazy stuff that happens, but we'll kind of get into like the story of it. So, do you want to tell a little bit about like the premise of Obsession?
Yeah. So the beginning of the movie, it centers around like four friends, and they're kind of all just hanging out. And one of the guys, his name is Bear. He is obsessed with one of the girls in like their friend group. And but she like knows like she doesn't like she does not like
Right.
him
It's
back.
it's very like clear from the beginning that she just sees Bear as a friend.
Yes. So
Her name is Nikki,
he
by the way.
Nikki, yeah. So he wants to get her like a present like one day whenever they're like going and hanging out, he wants to like get her a present and he goes to this shop. And it's kind of like a because she likes crystals and stuff, so it's kind of like a crystal shop, kind of, you know, one
Cult
of those
thing.
cool, like
Yeah.
cool kind of stuff like that. And he's looking around, he's looking for some crystals and stuff, and he sees like he's like about to leave and he sees this box and it says like one wish wonder on it.
One Wish Willow.
One wish willow, that's what it was. And he was like not convinced. like works at all. He's talking to the store clerk, and basically the way it works is it's a wish that you get to come true. But the guy at the desk was talking about how people return it all the time and like get really mad about their wish not coming true, their wish not making sense, if that makes sense. But he does end up buying that, but he buys her something else too. Um, and just kind of keeps that like in his back pocket in his backpack. Um, so then they like all four of them go and hang out, and he's like, "Okay, Nikki, I'll drive you home," because she wanted to go home. And at the end of like the car ride, they're like saying bye, and she like starts to walk away, and he decides to like use his wish and says, "I wish that Nikki would like love me forever or love me, you know." And so he breaks because that's how you work it.
I think he like legit wishes that she would be obsessed with him or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's something he says like would love me forever, or would like love me more than anything,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
I think it's
something like
love me
that.
more than anything or something like
Right.
that. And he breaks it's like a little like stick.
Stick.
Like a stick.
Back to the stick. Freaking weapons and obsession. Like,
Yeah,
what's with breaking
literally.
sticks lately? I'm scared.
Yes. So he opens it, he takes the stick, he like says the wish and he breaks it. And that's what like starts it. And she is like mid walking to her like door. And then she turns around and comes back, and like you can her facial acting of when she's switching from
Indy, yeah,
yeah.
it's like actually insane. People are applauding her because you can clearly feel the complete shifts from when she's like wish Nikki and normal Nikki. It's
Mm-hmm.
so impressive.
Mm-hmm. So basically she like comes back, and I don't know how to describe it, but like she's feeling like the wish, but she's also like still old Nikki, so she's not fully
Right. There's this whole scene where
giving in.
she's like, I love you so much. And then she's like, wait, where the hell am I? And then she's like, I'm sorry, I'm acting weird. Like you can see her switching back and forth. You
Yes.
can kind of tell like the wish is taking over, but she's also trying to like hold back because she doesn't understand what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's really awesome.
So then it goes throughout a good majority of the movie, her falling in love with him or being obsessed with him, and like living with him and following him to like everything. And then their friend group's like, this is weird. We never like Nikki never showed signs that she liked you or anything like that, because the other girl in their friend group secretly likes Bear.
Hmm.
So it was this whole thing of like, okay, but she likes Bear, but Nikki doesn't like Bear, but now because of the wish, they're together, and it just gets a little crazy.
Yes. So this has spawned the new genre that we are calling incel horror. Now, for those out there, mom, dad, grandma Buckner, all my fellow, non-Gen Z listeners, what is an incel? An incel, it's it's like a term that is kind of like a niche internet slang, I guess, that is kind of becoming, I would say, a more like frequently used word, but it's used a lot to kind of discuss like misogyny, gender, like and like, violence, female violence and stuff like that. But incel is short for involuntarily celibate. I learned that today, which I just was like, okay, I didn't even realize, that it was like short for something, but involuntarily celibate. So basically, in its like basic form, it describes somebody, which usually 9 times out of 10, we're talking about a male who is like frustrated and upset about the lack of like sexual experiences and is usually blaming women for their lack of like romantic and sexual success. And it's usually always fueled by like misogynistic viewpoints. So people have now kind of coined this term because we're seeing a trend in a lot of films that kind of have these themes to it. But you can look back, it's going back all the way a decade ago to like 2016. There's films that follow this. But it just kind of boils down to a man decides that he is entitled to the control over a woman and her livelihood. And it's a really interesting concept that you can see straightforward within Obsession, that Bear, regardless of whether he believed or not that the wish was going to work in the first place,
Hmm.
he was already like asserting his control over her by making the wish.
Hmm.
Even if he like didn't think that it was actually going to work, he still made the wish with the idea
The
that,
intention
right,
to
the intention that it could
it
work.
could work.
It's like what happens basically without giving too much away is, he feels like he has this right to Nikki's affection. He uses this, you know, supernatural thing to get it, which causes Nikki to become obsessed with him and to the point that she's like murdering people and causing all of this havoc.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting to see because I think that it kind of it puts a big swing on, and I'll talk about this a little bit deeper later when I get into kind of like the decades, but how traditional thrasher films and like slasher movies, there was always like the final girl, and the final
Hmm.
girl was always deemed this like innocent, pure
Innocent.
girl. The one
Hmm.
who, the people who died in all these movies were like the kids who were, having sex in the back seat or something. They're the
Hmm.
ones that get killed, or all the
Hmm.
ones drinking and partying. And it's like the innocent, quiet girl that ends up being the final girl, right?
Hmm. The
And
girl
so,
next door.
right. And so it kind of shows like these nice girls, even nice guys, all of these nice people as the victim to some external threat. But these movies are kind of asking the audience to like consider whether he is the threat and not the victim, which I think
Hmm.
is super cool.
Hmm.
So I want to kind of rewind a little bit and talk about the different eras of horror and how it kind of pertains to what's going on in the world, and then how this kind of, in turn pertains to what's going on in our world today. There's a really cool post that I saw about this a while ago. I want to say it was a couple months ago, but it's by an Instagram account called Pop My Bub. I know it sounds a little weird, but if you're a film lover and you like seeing things, different topics that people talk about, different, if you want inspiration for movies to watch and stuff like that, it's a really awesome account. And they have a Substack too that you can subscribe to that talks about this stuff. So I credit majority of this stuff to them in this conversation because the whole like decades thing, I learned a lot from their Substack article about it. So but what's kind of, all encompassing talking about using horror as a mirror for what's going on in the world. So you can go all the way back to the 1800s when we get the horror movies like Dracula, Frankenstein, Jekyll and Hyde, all of these that in the height of creation and science and innovation, how it was kind of like outpacing morality. And in turn, people really feared human ambition. And
Hmm.
so you have all of these like Frankenstein being about this, crazy scientist, this doctor who is developing this monster and creating something.
Hmm.
In the 1800s when innovation was at its peak, people are developing things, people are getting very scared by
Hmm.
science and like what could come from people. And so
Hmm.
you can kind of see how there's that natural parallel within the horror movies. Horror movies. I don't know if I would consider Frankenstein a horror, but for the 1800s, I mean, like, what's going to get
It's
scarier than that?
considered.
Right.
Yeah.
So from the 1800s, we're going to jump to the 1950s. And the 1950s, think of, this is like peak. We're getting into like the Cold War and communism and, just finishing up like World War II and stuff like that. And so people are fearing a lot of like outsiders and invasion and kind of losing identity and stuff like that to these outside entities. And so that's where you see a lot of films that are about like aliens, I think, is a lot. Like you have The Thing, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Blob. Like these are all
Mhm.
films about these like alien extraterrestrial things that are invading your homeland. And so I think that that plays a big part is this whole, this is when we're seeing the our world at such a wartime of outsiders coming in and trying to interrupt your identity. So that I think it's a very interesting parallel in like what was going on in history to now. And then you kind of get into the 1960s, which is a big like the baby boomer, very heavily focused on that like atomic
Family
family,
oriented.
and so you start to see these films like Psycho and Rosemary's Baby that play a lot into like that fear of kind of like familiarity and like the people that you know and the things that you're used to,
Hmm.
like how this in like Rosemary's Baby, she's obviously pregnant with this like demonic entity thing. And so it kind of like plagues this idea that this domestic life is a trap and could be something like somewhat of a threat. And I think that that made people really, I mean, these to me are like the first real horror movies. Like Rosemary's Baby to me and Psycho are big ones where you're like, people are beginning to feel unsafe, this like repressed desire, things like that, that they're having to talk about it through film. So 1970s, 1980s, that's when you really start to get into the iconic horror films. So 1970s, 1980s, we're talking like Carrie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Um, these are it's a very big time when I think that like we're talking about women and like women empowerment and things like that, and how purity and like flesh and body and control is a really big topic too. And so I think that that's kind of how they use these films is especially when they introduce this is the first time I think that like the final girl is introduced into horror, and they kind of use the final girl as like a anchor for morality and showing people like, hey, kind of like what I talked about earlier, like if you're pure and you're not a horrible person doing all of these horrible things, then like you're gonna survive and the world's gonna choose you and you'll be safe and all, like plays you as like you're gonna survive by being good. This kind of era where I feel like they're really about controlling body and who you are and things like that. So
Hmm.
continuing on to the 1990s, where you get some of the most iconic films like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. To me,
Hmm.
these are very like aware of horror at this point. They're making movies like, Scream, what's your favorite scary movie is iconic to Scream.
Hmm.
I feel like these are when they're very aware that like horror is a thing. There's iconic horror movies out there. So they're kind of using fear as like entertainment,
Hmm.
and it's very like pop culture savvy. They're starting to really focus on like media coverage of this stuff, and ultimately you see a lot of like characters using like jokes about like the horror rules and horror tropes and stuff like that to their
Hmm.
advantage, which I think is like prominent to the 1990s because that was really when they you had the big boom of things like pop culture, MTV, Blockbuster. Like these are all big things from the 90s, music videos that I feel like is really when you start to see like social media in a way come to
Hmm.
light and people can like conversate about these things, and
Hmm.
use them for entertainment purposes, right? So now we're getting into the good stuff. We're getting into the 2000s, right? This is my favorite era, the 2000s. So this is where you really start to get, like movies that are heavily fueled kind of on like violence and a lot of like the fact that like death has no logic. Like it's coming for anybody, anytime, like anybody is susceptible, and how you're like the events that you have lead up to certain things
Hmm.
because we're seeing movies like Final Destination
Hmm.
and like the Saw films. And I
Hmm.
think that this all kind of like stems from 9/11. Like people are scared and it's of course we're even deeper into social media and the news and TV and things like that. So you get a lot of like, you know, this violence that they're seeing in real life is
Hmm.
on, like I said, TV, the news, it's in video games, stuff like that. And so we're like surrounded by all of this,
Hmm.
And so, of course, they're fueling it into the films that they're creating. And then on top of that, I feel like this is really when you start to get like found footage films. Like, I know I wouldn't necessarily say they're scary, but like the paranormal activity films come out in the 2000s.
Hmm.
And those I feel like really start to blur the lines between like what's real and what's
Real, what's
not. And that's like a big portion of these horror films of the 2000s, as it's kind of like putting these scary moments on
potential
display for the world.
scenarios,
Yeah,
potential scenarios on
right.
display, especially with
On
Final
display.
Destination.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then the 2010s is a very specific time in horror, and I think that the 2010s is really when they started to like stray away from like heavy jump scare horror,
Hmm.
and now it's kind of fueled by this level of like unease and tension and this like
Hmm.
general feeling of discomfort throughout the film because you're getting things like this is when A24 starts to really pop off because we got like Hereditary and Midsommar and then even like the Babadook and things like that. Like
Hmm.
these are all films that really start to feature grief and loss and trauma and like your trauma responses. And I feel
Hmm.
like we really see like psychological horror a lot more in this.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's just kind of it kind of feels like a way to express like emotional realism and they made this was a quote from the Pop My Bub thing that says, talk about things that linger but don't die, which I feel like is like emotions and feelings and then like horror things that linger and don't die, like they go hand in hand. And I really feel like the 2010s are a time when people started to realize like, talking about your feelings and expressing how you feel and therapy and really
Hmm.
leaning into like the mental psyche and stuff like that was a big point of this time. So that's where we start to see it, A lot of films about grief and pain and stuff like that and suffering come from the 2010s, which I think is
Hmm.
super, super cool. And then the 2020s is now, of course, where we really start to get into digital horror, I would say. Like you have, of course, like Black Mirror and like the stupid Megan movies, but I mean, it's a lot of like the fear of being watched or
Hmm.
like duplicated and stuff like that. And how this like identity horror is it's like a monster like within yourself too. So like I'm thinking
Hmm.
like Smile and the Substance and stuff like that, where
Hmm.
it's like who you are as a person, like and how you feel about yourself can be affected into the horror.
I feel like also at the beginning of the 2020s, a lot of like horror comedy was
Yeah.
big too. And like that really relates because everybody like there were a lot of things happening in the beginning of 2020, obviously COVID and everything like that, and a lot of people downplayed everything with comedy and like
Right.
turned to social media for comedy reasons.
Yeah. And we've had this conversation before too, a lot of times, where I think that people try to make the horror genre more appealing to the masses
Hmm.
by making it horror comedy. Like
Hmm.
in 2025, there was a ridiculous amount of horror comedy that came out. Like, I swear, Ava and I, it was like, oh,
So many.
scary movies coming out. Let's go see it in theaters. Oh, horror comedy,
Oh.
thriller comedy. Oh, action comedy. Like, not everything has to be funny, people. Like, I want a movie with a little bit of substance. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love comedy better than the next person. But if I want comedy, I'm talking like White Chicks in Orbit. Like, those are the comedy that I want.
Raunchy comedy,
Right. Like,
funny
give
like
me
that.
something funny like that. I'm not trying to see, horror comedy. It just is like it doesn't do it for
Where
me.
like a jump scare happens and then it's like, but it's like not a real jump scare and it's just like their cat or something.
Right.
Like that's just
Now,
like
I
that's
will
dumb to
say, like,
me.
there's some films that do it good.
No, yeah.
Like last year, Hell of a Summer that we saw, which if you haven't seen it, I think it's on Hulu, but it's kind of like summer
Hmm.
camp. It's very kind of 90s, like, slasher, like summer camp vibes. And it was so good. And the comedy was placed really well. But I felt like it just lacked that like, I don't know what's
Oh,
gonna
I'm
happen. I'm
scared.
scared.
Yeah.
Like it just lacks that because you're constantly waiting for the next like zing, to drop. Plus, not this doesn't really pertain to like the themes of the horror movie, but like, why did they start putting the entire movie in the trailers?
Yeah.
Like in Hard Eyes specifically, they put the best jump scare in Hard Eyes in the trailer. So you
In the
knew that it was
trailer.
going to happen. Like it was an amazing jump scare. He jumps out of the closet and it was like perfect. But I'm also like, what? They was in the trailer. Like I knew that it
Yeah.
was coming.
Yeah. Yeah. That I feel like
So,
has been a theme too lately where you get the whole movie
right.
in the trailer.
Needless to say, I think incel horror fits into this perfectly because you see there's a huge rise in like independent women and like focus on like femininity as like this empowerment tool and like you can even it's like scientific right now, like there's a Pew Research Center study that shows that women, this was done in 2020, so 6 years ago, mind you, so it's probably higher than it is now, or now than it is from then, but that 23% of women are less likely to date because they're tired of the emotional toll that dating takes and having to be like taking in that like that mental load for everything. And I feel like that's a big thing, like women aren't dating men, they aren't, hooking up with guys. Like that's a big thing right now is people are focusing on themselves,
Hmm.
self-love and self-discovery right now. And I think that that's where we get that incel horror, right?
Hmm.
That's where we get this idea that men have to control women to fulfill these romantic and sexual desires
It's a male
because
savior trope. It's a male savior
it
trope.
is, it's where men are trying to become the victim in these instances and in turn turning into the threat, and the
Hmm.
predator. Now, disclaimer, we're not saying we hate men. This is nothing against men. There's great men out there, but we're just commenting on the general theme that we're seeing in these films. Right? Right. Right.
Right.
Okay. So, you're probably wondering what other films have this theme. It's not just obsession, right? Don't worry. We got the list for you. The first up, we're going to talk about Companion, which why did people not talk about Companion?
I feel like it was very slept on.
It was. And okay, in its defense, we've said this multiple times. 2025 was like a year for film. Like
Hmm.
amazing movies came out last year. So I think it
Hmm.
just kind of got, caught up in the fuel of all of these amazing movies and it was kind of slept on. But it has two of our favorite people, Sophie Thatcher and
And
Jack
Jack
Quaid.
Quaid.
We love some Jack Quaid in this household.
And
But
that one guy
Lucas
that's in,
Gage,
yes, him. I love
oh,
him.
I love Lucas Gage. He is just so funny, so iconic.
I love
Give this
everything that
man more
he's in.
roles. Yes, like, I love him. Anyway, so, okay, because clearly people didn't see Companion. I bet you're wondering, what's that?
Thinking about.
What is that? So, basically, Companion is about this, like, seemingly super nice guy. He's just like,
He's just a chill guy. He's just
a
a
chill
normal
guy.
bro.
Like, he's just like,
Like it's Jack Quaid.
he's just like really sweet. Like, he's not a crazy guy, He purchases this robot girlfriend that he has complete and utter control over. He has an app that he uses to control her. She must obey his every command,
Mm.
basically. But, you know, she begins to kind of realize that things are adding up, and she becomes sentient and realizes that she is a robot and that he has control over her,
And she doesn't want to be a robot
and
that's
she
controlled
doesn't
anymore.
want to be a robot because who would want to be a robot that's being controlled? So, Miss Girl takes matters into her own hands and she becomes violent. Okay, that's a win for the women. Let me get a round of applause in the chat, you know what I'm saying? But that's what I mean, I'm just like this is a perfect example. Is
Hmm.
obviously like she's a robot and you can talk all you want about like robots and they don't have like feelings and stuff like that. But clearly this woman was programmed with like feelings and emotions or else she wouldn't have become sentient and realized that
They're
like
they're
she's not
programmed with
real.
like a backstory too of like the meeting and everything
Right.
like that. So like they program like their meet cute and everything like that too. So like
And there's
they
other robots in the
develop,
story too.
yes, they develop like I don't want to say feelings, but like thoughts and emotions because
Right.
of that.
Yeah, I agree. And that's like that to me was like the when I started hearing about this, I was like, "Oh, of course, companion. Like that fits in perfectly."
Hmm.
So then I've seen a lot of people compare or put this film in there that came out 2 years ago, Blink Twice. Now
Hmm.
this one for that the time of Diddy, this movie was a little all too real, a
All
little
too
too close
real.
to home. And it was one of those things that like the the trailer I feel like didn't really like you knew kind of what was happening, but you didn't realize what was happening. And I left that theater like jaw on the floor. I was like, what the did we just watch?
Yep.
So for those that didn't see this, Blink Twice is about this, he's just like this he's just this like nice, cool guy. And and he meets these
He's this
really
millionaire.
right. He's just a great, nice millionaire guy, and he meets these women and he invites them. He's like, "Come on, we're having a bunch of people out to my island, my island that I own, my private island, big vacation. It's amazing." Okay, so these girls go,
Like
right?
for free, and these girls are like waitresses, and they
Right.
like fly like by the seat of their pants, like don't have a
Exactly.
lot of extra money.
And so of course, like, I mean, hey, you would do it too for a check. I mean, a girl's got to do what a girl's got to
Like
do. So,
imagine, okay, imagine you're like a wait staff at like a big event, and Channing Tatum is the one that comes up to you
well,
and tells you, "Hey, come to my private island." Yeah,
like
I'm
you would
there.
do it. Like
I'm
I know
sad.
all of you would do it. Okay,
Like I'm
so
sad.
let's don't
I'd be there.
right. But their fears kind of become reality where they start to like really realize that like they're not remembering what
As each day goes
happened.
on, they're forgetting small moments of the
Right. And
days
so
before.
right, they're realizing that like things aren't adding up
And each day
and
becomes the same. And each day is like
right,
becoming the same cycle.
it is. And spoilers ahead. Okay? If you haven't seen the movie, like what are you doing? Just go watch it. Pause
I
this
think
and
it's
go
on
watch
Prime.
it. Come back though. Um basically what they realize is that every single night they are being drugged and the men at this event
So there's
and
multiple
men
men. It's not just Channing
not
Tatum's
just Channing
character.
Tatum's character, the men that are at this on this island and men coming in from outside the island are using the women as objects. If you can catch my drift as to what I mean. Using these women as objects and in ways that satiate a need that these men have.
Hmm.
It's repulsive. The film is crazy. I couldn't look at Channing Tatum for a hot minute because I was like
It's crazy.
trying to separate the art from the artist, but I was thrown off. But I mean, perfect
Cinematically, it's
example.
a really good movie,
Right.
but
Perfect example
uh-huh.
of how a man feels he's entitled. That these men, these billionaires, millionaires, rich men, feel that they're entitled and that there's no consequences for their actions of what they're doing to these women.
Hmm.
It's absolutely repulsive and disgusting. So, another film to add to your incel horror genre. Now, this one I think is like this film, when this film came out in 2022, to me is when the topic of incel horror really started to snowball. Really,
Hmm.
when it kind of became an object of like, oh, is this a thing? Don't worry, darling. If you don't know what this film is, one, what are you doing? Like, everybody saw Don't Worry, Darling. Like, the Don't Worry, Darling press tour was something to really remember and speak of. Um, but Don't Worry, Darling has Harry Styles in it, so that should be enough for you to go watch it. And Florence Pugh, which, like, if you weren't sold on Harry Styles, you better be sold on Florence Pugh. Like, I know Mama and I know Dada. So anyway, basically, it's about, this nice guy. He's just this nice, sweet, charismatic guy and his beautiful wife, and they live
Harry Styles.
this beautiful, happy life. And his wife is obedient, and it's very like 1950s. Everybody lives this gorgeous life, and they're in this beautiful cul-de-sac with these picture perfect cookie cutter homes, and the men all go off to work every day, and the women go and they shop, and they, ride the trolley, and they spend time together, and that's it. Every single day, like a cycle, over and over again. These women, that's all they do. Their men go off to work. They just obedient housewives, right?
Hmm.
But Florence Pugh's character slowly starts to kind of fall out of this trance and realize like she can't leave, and she's seeing things and feeling things, and is this place real? Like, there's one scene where she's cracking these eggs, and every single one of them is empty. They're just empty eggshells. And so she starts to, she's talking to people around her, all these other women, and they all have the exact same story of how they met their husbands. And so it's kind of similar to Companion in a way, but
Hmm.
spoilers, of course, you realize that none of it is real, and Harry Styles' character has her trapped in his apartment in an alternate reality. He has he you they jump to like or flash back to when this all started. She's tired of him because he can't keep a job. He's this gross incel, horrible person who's a low life, and she's this like nurse working back to back 12-hour shifts, trying to put food on their table, and she's about to leave him. And he's like, "No, I found this thing, like it's going to be a better life for us." And she's like, "No, I'm leaving." So he kidnaps her, ties her to the bed, puts her in this like comatose state where the alternate reality is in her brain, and keeps her there for his sole purpose that he can live out his life with her. He has to leave every single day, and she stays in this trance.
Hmm.
Like, what? Absolutely insane, batshit crazy. But a man feeling entitled
Hmm.
to the control over a woman's livelihood,
Hmm.
it's textbook, people. It's written right there on paper. Literally written right there on paper.
Hmm.
Last film we'll talk about, we're throwing it all the way back to 2016, okay? And this movie, I don't really think it's not advertised as a horror movie by any sense of the word. It is more of this like
Bye
sci-fi,
bye. Hmm.
some may even say like romance in a way. It's anything but, if you're catching my drift. Why do you think we're roping it into all this?
Yeah.
Right. So, we're talking about 2016's Passengers. So this has Chris, what's his, no, which one is this? Who plays in
Chris Pine. Chris Pine.
Guardians of the Galaxy?
Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt. I knew it was one of the Chris's. Every man's named Chris in my brain, you know what I'm saying? Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, okay? So basically, there are these two astronauts that are living on this spaceship, and I don't remember exactly the premise, but I think it's like, they're traveling light years and light years and light years away. So they're put into this like sleep chamber, like cryo sleep. Like you see in all of these,
Space
space
movies.
movies, to travel hundreds of thousands of light years, you're basically put in this cryo sleep to be frozen in time, right? Well, Chris Pratt's character's sleep pod malfunctions and he wakes up, basically dooming him to death on this spaceship.
Hmm.
Like he will die before they reach their destination.
Hmm.
So what he does internally, he decides that what he's going to do is wake up the only other person on the ship so he has a companion, Jennifer Lawrence's character.
Hmm.
So he wakes her up out of her cryo sleep, mind you, dooming her to death, basically killing her because now neither of them are going to survive. They will die on that spaceship now. He, of course, his sleep pod malfunctioned. Horrible, unfortunate circumstances for him. But she could have been the one that made it to where they were going, saved humanity. Like she could have been the one to do that because she was still in cryosleep.
Yep.
But this man was lonely
And felt entitled to
and
their
felt
power
entitled
over
to
women.
his power and control over this woman and woke her up out of her cryosleep. And to me, that is just absolutely diabolical. Diabolical. So it's completely crazy to me that somebody even has like the guts to do that. Like you're gonna just kill us both, right? Like it blows my mind.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that this incel horror really it fits into the time that we live in. And unfortunately, it's a little bit, sad and morbid and maybe a pessimistic point of view, but we live in a society where there's a lot of gender-based violence and that women, women see men as a threat, while these men see themselves as like this protector and this savior, that I mean, there's this whole thing on social media that I don't know if people have seen, but it's like, would you choose a man or the bear? If you're in a forest alone at night, are you choosing to run into a man or are you choosing to run into a bear? And women are consistently now and now again choosing the bear because they know that with a bear, their outcome is death. That's it. Like if you run into a bear in the forest at night, your outcome is death. But with a man, the idea that he could do something so much worse to you than death is making women choose death. It's seriously,
Mind-boggling and
it's
insane, and
it's a concept bigger than what we are contracted to talk about on this podcast, okay? So, with all that being said, I hope that you look into some of this, and I hope that you take this long list of films that we talked about and dive into some of them. I think that, horror is written off as kind of this, they're usually have a very small budget. They're just there for the gore and the scare of it all. But when you really start to dig into these films, they have such deep themes and underlying meanings behind them. And that's personally why I think horror is one of my like favorite genres to watch. I love horror films. So take this as your opportunity. If you're not a big horror person, dip your toes in the water. Like
none of them are very like scary, scary, except for I would say probably the most scary one would be Obsession.
Obsession, I would say, is scary because of the trigger warning cat thing. That's all I'm going to say. No one warned me about that.
I did.
Yeah, but you didn't tell me what it was about.
And we're not saying any of these films are bad. We're just saying that they're the types of film that you watch to get a different perspective and to
Exactly.
really
Yes.
see what underlying themes are like
Right.
in
Like
movies.
there's just sometimes films are there to just show you, like you said, a different
Different
perspective, to see
perspective
it from a different
where you can
light
recognize your own positionality like in the
in the
world and
story.
like where
Yes,
you're at
yes,
within the story.
agreed. And so I just like, of course, we know that not every man is an incel. We know that, we're not writing off men. We love our men, especially the good ones, you know what I'm saying? That's Williams and Connor story. Sorry. But I think that's such an interesting concept. Like this whole horror theme is just it's cool to see how the trends in society affect the themes of the films that you see. And this is
Mhm.
bigger than just horror. Like I'm sure we could dive deeper and you could talk rom-coms, you could
Mhm.
talk action films, you could
Mhm.
talk even things like sad drama films, anything like that is going to fit into what's going on in the time because people gain inspiration from what's around them.
Mhm.
So it's super cool to see. These are the kind of things that like my film nerd brain loves to read about is like how the themes are affected by outside circumstances and environmental things. So
Mhm.
I think it's a cool concept. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's long-winded and I know I talked a lot. Next week we'll make Ava talk. Okay?
Maybe.
My one wish Willow. Ava talks on the podcast.
All right, guys, that's all for the rest of the day. It's all today's work. No, I'm kidding.
There we go. That's what you have, guys. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode and that you have a wonderful rest of the week and that you keep watching what you're watching. And I hope that what you're watching is these horror movies, all right? That's what I'm talking about. Love you guys. Bye.